Hey, good morning, everybody. Today is absolutely a fantastic day. Welcome to the Energy Newsbeat podcast. My name is Stu Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group, and we've got really an action-packed podcast for you today. We have Susan Combs. She is the chairperson or chair board. I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but she has a way to describe herself as well, too, with the Carbon Neutral Coalition, and we're going to talk about how important that coalition is. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you so much. I hope you're getting rain out where you are.
We lost power several times, and I am in the middle of nowhere, Susan, but you ousted me out on where you are. Where are you at?
Well, today I'm in Austin, but I'm going to be spending the next month at my ranch in the Big Bend, and it is 405 miles from my house here to my cattle guard.
Oh, my goodness. And how close is your grocery store?
It's a 100-mile round trip.
Man, okay, you got me beat. It's only an hour for the police to get here at my place, but we have a small grocery store right down the road, so I can't complain.
Well, I can go buy milk in town, but that's 15 miles.
Oh.
That's a little town of 450 people. And by the way, Stu, the K-12 ISD kids are only 57 kids, K through 12.
Wow.
Pretty teensy.
Oh, that's great. I only had 112 in my high school, so that's pretty sad.
And this is all grades. It's even including preschool, K through 12. Pre-K through 12 is 57 individuals.
Wow. Well, small rural schools are so important. But Susan, tell us about the coalition and what you're doing there as the chair.
Thanks. Corby Robertson, who's a great guy out of Houston, and he's well-versed in lots of things. He got to looking at where the fossil fuels conversation was going. And so about a year ago, he decided that he wanted to set up something called the Carbon Neutral Coalition. And so that's been set up, and I believe that's a 501c4, but then it needed an advisory board. And so we're all volunteers. And we've got about, 30 people on. I don't have the list in front of me, but it's meant to be an amplifier, a conversation starter, and a way for us to really talk about being carbon neutral by 2050. And how would you do that? And as the chair, my job is to sort of ride herd on the 4 committees. And so, and send them silent but zingy emails once in a while. Well, how are you? Haven't heard from you lately. So I do that, and kind of herd the cats. But we think it's really important. And Corby got some interesting research done that said Texans really, really do want reliable, affordable energy, and they want to have a clean, sound environment. And our posture is you can have both.
Isn't that great? Because when you say carbon neutral, that usually brings up a defense mechanism for oil and gas folk. And that's not what you guys are about.
No, and in fact, I think there's been a sea change over the last several years. I think I see folks in the Permian Basin fully embracing, capturing methane, fully embracing carbon capture, utilization, and storage, fully embracing the suite of things. Now, obviously, depending on where you are in the chain, you may have a different perspective. A major may feel different than somebody else. But I think the unanimity is pretty exciting.
Your coalition has got some thoroughbreds on those board members that you have. You got Sean Strawbridge, Elizabeth Aim Combs. I mean, excuse me, you got some powerhouse people on this coalition.
We have a great guy out of Canada named Mike Belenky. He's been very helpful on talking about sort of things. We've got folks from the West Coast. We've got people representing agriculture. I've got Farm Bureau on there. We've got timber interests. We have a friend of mine, Julie Parsley. She's the executive director of the Pedernales Electric Co-op. So she sort of brings the interplay in there, what the electricity market is like. We have people with pipelines. You've got people who would be in the scope 3 area. We've got Texas 2036, Tom Luce. He's part of the coalition. It's it's meant to be as diverse as possible. And that's been our strength.
Oh my goodness. Talk about a thoroughbred pen, or if you want to call a bullpen in baseball. Holy smokes.
Well, it's been great because then they're on these various committees and they
Right,
all have such sort of incredible knowledge bases. They can
right.
give an answer to a question immediately, no research,
Oh
which
no.
is which
And
is
so
hugely
when
valuable.
when you and I were just, I didn't mean to cut you off. I get so excited about talking about this. And so when you and I were just chatting before this, ESG is so important. And I firmly believe that I've said a bazillion times, there is no ESG without accountability. And what are your thoughts on accountability?
I totally agree. I think right now we've been sort of discussing offline about accountants. How do they even measure
Mhm.
ESG? There is no single template, there is no model. And so, but it's being bandied about as a must have. And so
Right,
one of the ways you can get, at least if you're measuring, and I'm a big believer in measuring as the former CFO for the state of Texas, if you don't measure and have your books open. So blockchain is, as you and I were briefly discussing, if you store carbon, you sequester it
right,
underground, and if you have it identified as a blockchain. I was having this conversation with Chuck McConnell of U of H this morning.
right,
That it's an interesting concept that it's uniquely identified. We're hearing a lot about accountability, whether it is in forests or soil capture or
right.
lots of things. And if the ESG is going to be the linchpin for all kinds of decision making, it's got
Right.
to be measurable.
You know, you guys are attacking one of the biggest problems that we have in the oil and gas industry, and that is there's a lack of capital in order to just replace normal decline curves. And there's no capital, and you guys are helping educate the ESG investors.
Yeah, we are because I think the flight of capital from fossil fuels is very both misguided and
Right,
unfortunate. You know, you've seen this number, global energy demand global is expected to rise 50% by 2050.
right,
That's a well-known quoted statistic. And you're going to have fossil fuels, fix them, fix the fossil fuels. Don't just throw them on the trash heap or the dustbin of history, fix them. And
right,
that means you're going to have infusions of capital in order to capture, transport,
right.
store, and account for all of the carbon.
Yeah, and um, fossil fuels have elevated the populations that can have reliable energy out of energy poverty, and that's
Mhm.
saving lives.
Right. And take a look at what's happening right now in Europe. I just was reading an article about Zelensky. And when we look at the fact that LNG needs to be moving to Europe, which
Right,
obviously Texas is working on helping doing, but
right,
you look at Russia's dominance, which was well known, but kind of not appreciated by Germany.
right,
uh, but well known, but they thought it was their friend. Well, Germany and Russia were not friends because they were having the financial screws put to them by the prices. And so
right.
now, as a national security matter, I truly believe that the United States has to be, energy, self-fulfilling,
Right,
generating energy. And let's not go ask Venezuela.
right.
Let's not go ask Iran. Let's ask the U.S.
No, absolutely. And getting, how is the coalition able, you've got such firepower in your board. How can the coalition help go get some of the regulatory stuff? How can you talk to those folks? Because education is huge. Educating politicians is almost impossible, it seems.
Well, we're trying it a couple of ways. One is we're preparing some papers. So each one of these committees has 2 pages, which we give out to legislators. Secondly, we're preparing little videos, and that's been successful. Thirdly, we're doing op-eds. We're working on an op-ed right now that we hope the Houston Chronicle will take. I've
Right.
had some op-eds published in San Antonio Express News, et cetera. But it is I think weirdly enough, the war in Europe is one of the biggest educators out there. Everybody is riveted to the fact that they need energy and they understand the United States has energy. And
Right.
all of a sudden, it's not an either or, it's we can do it all. We can have it all. And I think that
Right.
education is taking place, west of Russia.
Oh, yes. And like you watched, I'm so grateful that you're the only fan that I have on one of my podcasts that you watched last week or a couple weeks ago with our California expert. And California is not exactly buying everything they should. They're buying from Iran, from,
Right.
all of the places that we have
South
sanctioned.
America.
They're not buying American energy, and they got
So I went and looked up because you all discussed the cost per kilowatt hour.
right,
So Alaska is the most expensive at 22.
right,
And then, of course, Washington State, no, Louisiana is the lowest at 937, but California is almost at 20. It's just about double what Texas is. And you all had, I thought, a very illuminating conversation about regulatory policies matter, tax matters.
right.
And if you don't deconstruct, if you don't peel the onion, then you
Right.
really don't know what has led to what. And the conversation about, tank of gas, very, very illuminating.
Well, thank you. I'd give you a hug, but we're miles apart. I'll take you to lunch next time I'm in
Right.
Austin. So I'll tell you, this is cool. Now, what are the next steps for the coalition?
Well, this is Cinco de Mayo. This is May the 5th. And so
Right.
what we're trying to do is we're trying to finish getting about 5 separate 2-pagers ready to sort of walk through the Capitol. And the executive director of the coalition is a very smart guy named John Caliandro. So John and his team, they go to the Capitol. You do have to educate the legislators, and sometimes it's the nuts and bolts they may not be aware of. And then we wait for the session to start, which is January of 2023.
Wow.
And we've already been working with the folks in the legislature on interim charges, for
Right.
the knowledgeable. It's the study efforts they're going to do. So we're working with them to have studies on, regulatory policy. For example, just the other day, the Railroad Commission passed a resolution or voted to go ahead and seek Class 6 well primacy. Now, Louisiana is in the application process for that, and California is, because that would allow us to faster, by working with EPA, and they've been doing it for about 6 months now, 8 months,
Right.
is get approval for storage,
Oh, cool.
underground storage. So that's one of the things we've been working on, monitoring and seeing how it goes. And again, just talking to people in leadership.
That is, having the great discussion and the horsepower to do that. Speaking of ranches, you got to have horsepower. And when you talk about storage, there's solar, wind, and you got to have energy storage for that. You just can't bring when you go through West Texas, you see so many. I didn't realize until ERCOT, the problem last year, how much energy, solar and renewables Texas has. Texas has got a huge chunk of
We're number one in wind.
Isn't that great?
It is great. And it's all of the above. We're supportive of all of them. One thing that happened with wind was that it was very much supported by the construction of the CREZ line, critical renewable energy zone. And, we're saying maybe we should think of some form of incentive so that we will go ahead and capture carbon. And then the price, the European market is going to say, "What? That's great. We're going to buy your stuff."
Isn't that great?
Yep.
So it's not only the price of oil, and my research team has really been looking at last year, Saudi Arabia and Russia published their budgets. Their budgets for oil are needed a $120 mark in order to meet their budget surpluses.
120?
120.
Wow.
And so do you think Saudi Arabia has been running. They've only been pumping up an additional 447,000 barrels per month increase, and we're at 110 this morning. Do you think they're going to really try to reduce? So your point, Susan, why is the administration asking someone that does not have our best interest at heart?
Well, that's baffled a lot of people. And the point is, I mean, I say that it's frustrating because we're all want to support this country. We want it to be successful. We want it to be, energy independent. And
right,
when the signals go to Wall Street, don't invest, don't provide investment capital to the Permian Basin or wherever. And I talk to folks out in Midland, and they will tell me money for the little guy, the independent guy, is very hard to come by.
right.
And that's I think too bad. That's really our energy security. I'm hoping that the message continues to sort of reverberate through the global situation going on with energy. And Germany is poised to get out of the Russian market by the end of the year, I believe. I think they're going to vote on that.
Right.
And I do think to make everybody come to the middle. In fact, there's an interesting comment. Wall Street, New York Times had an interesting interview with a guy named Václav Smil, VACLAV, look him up, SMIL. He's written a book, which is coming out next week, called How the World Really Works.
Wow.
And he is Bill Gates's famous book writer. And he talks about the fact there's this hysteria on either side in some cases.
Right.
And he says, what we really need is let's just get to the boring, mundane, accurate middle where all the solutions really are generated.
How cool is that?
That was pretty fun.
Let's get me, you, and him on a panel with Chuck and have a great discussion about his book.
He's evidently a very brilliant recluse. Nobody knows where he is, but he's smart. But literally, I had to spell the name again. Simil, S-I-M-L, Václav Simil.
I went to Oklahoma State, and there's no way I'd even try to even spell that.
Maybe I have it backwards. I typed it, but he was talking about cement, steel, plastics, and ammonia. Those four things.
Right.
Cement, steel, plastics, and ammonia. We have to have them. The world has to have them. And so we've got to find a way to solve the carbon problem.
Exactly. Our research team found that even though California has all solar, they got one nuke. And I found out that they, in just a interview with the head of ESG over at Inveris, that they don't have any more coal. But the CO2 pollution in California is because of coal, coking coal that they have to have for all the cement that they're using.
Right. Right.
So they're still using a ton of coal. We got to capture that.
And importing it. By the way, I think the importing brings me back to life cycle analysis.
Right.
So if you're being very pure,
right,
you really do need to have the cradle to grave. You need to have everything from the very inception of where you picked up, whether you've got a photovoltaic cell or whether you've got a wind turbine, and to disposal, that whole thing. And so if you're sourcing from China or if you're sourcing from India, I would suggest that research will probably show it's not, pure, sparkly green.
No. Well, that's brilliant. And I apologize for complimenting you, but that's exactly right. But how do we address the rare earth minerals? Because it's impossible, isn't it?
Well, when I was at the Department of the Interior, I was there as the chief financial officer, there was a lot of conversation about critical minerals, et cetera. And so they were trying, this was in the last administration, they were trying to go ahead and source them within the United States. And of course, the digging and the mining is always an issue. But what happens is if a chip is not being made in this country, if it's being made elsewhere, and you can't buy a new car, no chips, you have supply chain problems because of source scarcity.
Right.
What the scarcity does is it imposes new and higher costs on the people who can least afford to pay for scarcity. It's really a horrible circle.
Oh, it is. And I used to work for Intel, and I never understood why Intel was putting their plants in China. You know, that was above my pay grade, but it seemed kind of non-patriotic to me.
Well, but that outsourcing, now you hear about resourcing or home sourcing, and
Right.
a lot of that is going to take quite a while to do, but it does require a change in government policy. And
Right.
if you tax the value out of what you're doing, why do it?
Exactly. It's why everybody's leaving California.
Yeah. Go look at the U-Haul stats.
Isn't that crazy? What were the numbers? I saw that in an article. I can't
Oh,
remember the numbers.
it's like they're coming east. They're coming to, of course, they are going to Nevada and New
Right.
Mexico, but in Texas, actually, number one is Dallas, number two is Houston, number three is San Antonio,
Right.
and Austin's gotten expensive, so it's further down.
Wow. Now I can't remember, Susan, help me on this one. I think it was like for a U-Haul, let's say just coming to Texas was $1,000. Going back was like $20. I mean, it was something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was clear that all the value was moving east. And going west, I mean, nobody wants to go west. So I drive on I-10 a lot because the ranch, I head out west from Austin, get onto I-10, and I drive about 300 miles on I-10. Well, I look at license plates.
Oh, yeah.
And so I see folks from other states, I won't name the states, other states, and it's always interesting to see how fast they're going.
Oh, how funny. Your insights are just really cool. Because now that you mention it, I kind of look at license plates, but I don't really put, I go, oh, yeah. There's a lot of cars. Now I'm going to be rude, Susan. Just hang on. I'm going to be rude. I hope they leave their voting where they were.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm just going to say yes.
So, if the energy policies don't work, let's meet together. I love that.
And that's why I think truly, if everybody on the extremes is using like 100 decibel screaming, that's not useful. But just get, like you said, boring, accurate, data-driven, middle, lower the volume.
I think you hit us, Susan, you hit a really bad problem and you said, excuse me, data-driven.
Yeah, well, I'm a total believer in data.
Yeah.
Total believer.
Well, when you're working with the Department of Energy as the CFO.
No, Department of Interior.
Department of, I don't care, either one.
I was their CFO.
Yeah,
and chief procurement officer and chief HR officer, et cetera. We did everything by the numbers, and you could document what paid and what didn't. When I was comptroller, I created a public data system for all debt owned by any public entity. I don't mean private public, I mean school district, MUDs, et cetera.
Wow.
And I tried to get to the legislature twice, and it was killed both times on points of order. So we just did it.
Wow. That's
It's
huge.
your money. It's your money. It's not my money. It wasn't my money.
I'm irritated. See, that's the way we need to have conversations. You say, hey, I'm irritated. You can agree to disagree and kind of move down the road. But that,
or
anyway,
fix it.
We're digressing. I'm sorry, I'm getting all worked up here.
No, but coming back to energy for Texas, yes, it is a major part of its revenue is energy. And Texans they're go-getters. They want to fix things. They want to find solutions. They are solutions driven. And I think the Carbon Neutral Coalition really sort of reflects all of that Texas spirit, which is that we've got this great energy. If they shut it down, we lose about 1 million jobs, which would be awful. But we can have it all. We can have clean energy. We can have good, reliable, affordable, reliable, abundant energy. And I think we just have to keep moving.
All right, Susan, I'm going to ask a tough question of you as the chair of the coalition. You're the coalition for neutral carbon for Texas. Why isn't this the U.S.? Because this is so important. This needs to be a U.S. coalition.
I think so. But again, take a look at Texas's scale. Number one, energy,
Right.
Gulf Coast, Houston hub. We've got huge amounts of cavern storage.
Right.
We've got all that coastline. We're talking about, planting 5 billion oysters in the next 4.5, 5 years. So for us, it's very much on our landscape. North Dakota is doing some great stuff. Louisiana is doing some great stuff.
Right.
Why it's not national is because most states aren't in lockstep on anything.
Ah.
And
yes.
so it's easier to take one state and then see if we can replicate it, see what we can do that bears fruit, and then
Right.
talk to neighbors. But we're talking, I talk to people in California, I talk to people in the Dakotas, I talk to people at the federal level,
Nice.
staff members, of course, Senator Cornyn and Senator Barrasso and some others.
Right.
And they're interested in Texas's results. And so that's why, coming back to what do we have to do? We really have to get with the legislature and see if we can't have a regulatory framework, a policy framework that's supportive, possibly find some way to incentivize and speed this thing up, overcoming sort of initial inertia. And I think we're working on that very hard. Corby's working on that very hard. And Chuck, as I said, is chair of the Futures Committee. Elizabeth is, Ames Coleman is chair of the CCUS committee.
Oh, cool. Yes.
And so everybody's kind of trying to work their magic based on their Rolodex, because Rolodex is an old word, but based on our contact list. And
Right.
I think, I'm touch wood, I think we're going to get someplace.
Isn't that great? Because we know how state actions can impact federal policies.
Yep.
And let's take Senate Bill 181 out of Colorado. That has been brutal to the Colorado folks. The language in Senate Bill 181 ended up in the infrastructure bill. With the infrastructure bill, all of a sudden they snuck in that natural gas was actually good. Then you go to worldwide COP26, natural gas was snuck in as a renewable with nuclear. The EU voted on it, and then all of a sudden it went. So that legislation and painful legislation started here, and the language ended up all over the place. And now you can use that language for natural gas to help articulate what you all are doing, and that is get the ESG investors. But that starts at the state. Texas has that much influence as well.
Yeah, and I think you raised a good point. I mean, we do have a big influence, and I think
yes,
we have to get the data. By contrast,
back to data.
Yeah, but by contrast, California wants to stop people from cooking on gas, and we cook on gas at the ranch in Austin, but again, it's not zero. It is not zero sum. It's not, yes, you may have gas and be evil, or you can have gas.
Okay, I'm going to ask a technical question, Susan. I have to use propane. There ain't no natural gas pipes where I'm at.
Well, I've got propane also.
Okay, cool.
I've got a generator at the ranch with propane.
I see. I just
mine at the ranch is propane. Yes, we don't have a pipeline. It's propane. The guy drives a truck.
Okay, yeah, I think propane as a natural gas is absolutely one of the best ways to get to carbon neutral possible and get it. It's a beautiful resource.
It is a great resource until the tank runs dry. And if your regulator is sick, we got down to like 20%. You can't tap on it very well and get very good results.
No, it's gotten so cold that you can't, where I'm at, you can't get a propane truck in here if the weather's bad. So I'm trapped like a rat. No.
Is it that cold in the winter? I guess you're pretty far north.
Well, Oklahoma, but
cold.
It gets cold and snowy. I mean, I had some but my road is so steep that when it gets even a little bit muddy, or you can't get in. But anyway, propane is so cool because it helps really showcase the value of natural gas. let's use natural gas for less impact. I'm sorry, we're having the same yelling, we're yelling down the same path.
But I mean, I do think, but that's because you've done your research and you studied it, you looked at it, and obviously it was available
Right.
and it's affordable and it's reliable.
Yep.
So that's what you want.
Right.
And when we had the storm here, February the 14th or 13th, who we all know Valentine's Day was not fun,
Right.
but it was a shock. And we've been told that this coming weekend, today's Thursday,
Right.
that Texas is going to be really hot. Well, it's May.
Right.
And it's going to be up 95, 100 degrees. It's May. We expect that. But they're telling people that the system may not hold, which means that, we've got to really find out what are the interconnections of solar and wind and natural gas and everything together so that we can have a seamless energy.
Let me ask this. I think one of the biggest problems we have also is the Jones Act. And that would help affect Texas as well too, because the Jones Act means that we have to have 80% of the crew, we have to have ships built, and that's one of the reasons that the Northeast is importing from Russia, Norway, and all of this. Do you have any ideas on how the coalition can help not kill it, but help modify that?
I don't think that's our focus. I think that's an ancillary focus, but no, I have not heard any discussions about the Jones Act. It does come up every so often as a delivery barrier.
Exactly.
But we're really talking, but that's federal.
Right.
So we're not focused very much on federal. We're primarily focused on the state right now. State action.
Boy, you know what? Let's get Texas to be the leader of, just like Colorado, it ended up in federal stuff. Maybe that we can do so good that we can end up making a change to the Jones.
My hope is that if Texas, because of its size and scale and production, and look where it is. It's on the Gulf Coast. It has that huge Gulf Coast area with Louisiana, obviously in Florida. But if we could really make substantive changes that really say we're going to be carbon neutral and it's not going to kill the economy, it's going to be good for us, I think it'd be great.
Oh, I think so too. And when you have winners like Sean Strawbridge in the port of Corpus Christi at such a natural such a national security issue, and they're hitting it out of the park, helping get it. And you have the folks over at Cheniere bringing their trains online. I mean, we got assets like you wouldn't believe in Texas.
And pipelines. A guy named Ken Medlock at Rice, and he's also on our advisory board. He's got a series of maps, and he'd be somebody for you to talk to. The infrastructure already in the ground for transportation, the infrastructure, and by that I mean the cavern space is already there, the production's there. Texas, it's like a map of blood vessels, and it is really very interesting. So Ken is at the Baker Institute at Rice, and so is Jim Blackburn's on our deal. He's the one that we work with on bee carbon and soil storage.
Oh, cool!
Very interesting.
Well, Susan, what's next for you coming around the corner? As the chair of the coalition, you've got to be so busy, but what's coming around the corner for you?
What's next is getting the life cycle analysis done. That is really critically important. That is going to be maybe the biggest education piece when you can chart this out. And you can see cradle to grave, everything. That's big. Getting everybody geared up to get ready for the legislative session. We're going to be participating in hearings. There'll be interim hearings, et cetera. And just running very, very fast starting in September.
Oh, how fun. Well, I'll tell you what, this time was so invaluable, Susan, for me, and I have just really appreciated this time. We are going to push this out to the planet. It's going to go out on all the socials. We're going to tag everybody. And thank you so much for your energy, thought leadership, and your total leadership in the industry. We just really appreciate you.
Well, Stu, we love your podcast. And so I tell people how to go get it, but I tell them to go straight to your website. Don't do a link. Sometimes the links don't show the video. So you go straight to your website and there it is.
Oh, thank you for giving me a plug, because I'm having so much fun. I think you can tell that. So I'm going to ask a really personal question. Was this your most fun podcast you've had?
Yes.
Yay. Okay. We
What other answer was available? None.
Yeah, my producer's going to go click. Anyway, thank you, Susan. We will talk soon.
Thanks, Stu. Appreciate it.